Good evening, everybody. Our inspiration today is Hod in Tiferet, humility in compassion. It deals with being humble in general, especially in our compassionate interactions. By the end of this talk, I hope you'll have some new ways and some new ideas about how to be more humble in your life, within your own being, and then to apply your humility in all of your compassionate acts. This way, everybody feels uplifted and validated rather than subjugated or inferior. So have you ever needed help but were afraid to ask for it? Or maybe got help from someone who made you feel smaller, unworthy, beholden, or guilty because of it? Or maybe did you even feel a little manipulated? Did you ever feel judged because of your need rather than experiencing genuine compassion from someone who actually is selflessly giving? Now, take a moment. What about the reverse? Giving and receiving should be a mutual exchange between equals, as we are all human beings in need of help at some point along the way. What we need to do is work in our lives to be able to make sure that we are not arrogant, that there are no power plays between people, because this will serve no one. Everybody will lose. Compassion can take many different forms in different circumstances. Giving to another with compassion, being there for them, should uplift, especially when done with humility. Rather than being done in a way that makes one person feel bigger and the other person feel a little insignificant, making one feel superior while the other feels like they're continually owing, never quite able to repay. Has this ever happened to you? It can happen in a variety of different circumstances. Just for some examples, parents with their children, between partners and coworkers, maybe on the job or with a supervisor, maybe even with a lover. We are all equal in the eyes of God. And even if you're not religious, we're all one humanity struggling with emotional issues, individual challenges. No one is immune. Wherever you are on the ladder of life, there's always going to be somebody above or somebody below, but we shouldn't treat them as such. We should be equal in our treatment to everybody. Zig Ziglar said, "You cannot climb the ladder of success dressed in the costume of failure." To help compassionately, we should always be thinking about how we can encourage success by being humble and seeking to elevate each other in all relationships, whether they're personal or professional. Right now, in these times that we have right now of COVID, there are authorities, world leaders, politicians. They're all at cross purposes with one another. Rather than being laser focused on success, there's been times when actually getting the whole story, sorting out the truth from fiction, what's really going on between fiction and fact, this has been an ongoing struggle. Now, some work from a pure, humble state of truth and compassion, while others not so much. People are being touted, people are being mocked. Compassion has been evident, but as time goes on, people get restless and negativity creeps in. Genuine advancement springs forth from a sense of healthy cooperation, and it's very important to have humility in your compassion. We see examples of this with doctors that are now going from California to New York to help learn and to find out what's been done there so they can then bring it back to the West Coast, and then to warn of potential dangers and also how we can maybe get a little bit ahead of the curve. We see this with people who are postponing joyous events in their lives and humbly sacrificing to stay in. People are canceling weddings or getting married and then putting off the party for later. The same thing with bar and bat mitzvahs, big birthday celebrations. People are making the choice to be humble in their needs and in their life in order to have compassion for the greater good, putting their ego aside. Others, although, are forming lawsuits now, or they're protesting to try to regain what they feel are their actual rights. So on the one hand, we have people who are humbly, compassionately giving. And then on the other hand, we have people who feel like they're being taken advantage of, or like they've lost all their rights, like they've been stripped of their ability to sustain themselves by people who are actually in superior positions of power. Humility is necessary for everyone to grow in the beauty that is found within the emotional attribute of Tiferet when compassion comes along with harmony and blends with the truth. In Judaism, we've discussed how humble Moses was, and Abraham as well, extending humility to his guests and in his quest to attract others away from worshiping idols to actually realizing and accepting and promoting the reality of a one true God. More recently, Dr. Candace Chow wrote, some of the greatest spiritual leaders, such as the Dalai Lama, Mahatma Gandhi, and Mother Teresa, displayed a strong sense of compassion, and yet at the same time were able to have some assertiveness. Supervisors, parents, teachers, people that we see have influence on our lives, they can be strong and compassionate without allowing the ego or superiority to seep in. There's an ability to actually lead with a quiet strength of humility. But first, everybody needs to get on the same page about what being humble really is, then applying it with the appropriate amount of compassion to truly make a difference. Vicky Zakshevsky, who's a PhD and an education director of the Greater Good Science Center, wrote a formula that's actually got 3 parts to it about how to be humble. In it, there's a sense of mastery that can be learned and applied, which will help ourselves, both our individual self, and then also in our dealings with others with humility and compassion, help them to feel accepted and validated and heard. It's important to be able to break down the barriers that can divide us so that a sense of healing can occur, that our compassion can actually be productive. Coming from a place of humility without being defensive or judgmental, being rather centered in a core of self-confidence, along with an understanding of personal limitations, allows both parties to retain their sense of dignity while giving and receiving, energizing both, creating a state of respect on the parties, both of them, uplifting and causing everyone to feel better for the exchange, generating compassion in the interaction, and collectively in our sense of humanity, human relations, and our world. Her formula for being humble has these 3 steps. The first one is to embrace your humanness. So what she says is when we fail at something that is important to us, a job or a relationship, our self-esteem plummets. All of a sudden, we can feel like we've become bad or unworthy people. Now, what we want to do during this time of COVID is make sure that we don't fall into this trap, because there's so much unemployment and there's a domino that this creates in the way people are going to feel about themselves and each other. She goes on to say, not so for people with humility. This is not what happens to them. Their ability to withstand failure or criticism comes from their sense of intrinsic value of being human rather than an outer means. So they're not beholden to their outer condition, their existential reality, or what's going on inside from a sense of self-doubt, because they're secure in themselves. They come from a place of having secure attachments in childhood, which research has shown about 40% of all adults are actually lacking. So it's necessary to do this work. And then the second one is to practice mindfulness and self-compassion. So meditation has been a real important thing to do during this time of COVID and pandemic or any crisis, or just really in life in general, because it helps quiet you and keep you in a state that's more centered and true to your own being. She says that humble people have an accurate picture of themselves. Mindfulness grows our self-awareness by giving us permission to stop and notice our thoughts and emotions without judgment. The more that we become aware of our inner lives, the easier it is to see where unhealthy beliefs and actions might be limiting us. And then the third and last one is expressing gratitude. Gratitude can make us less self-focused on ourselves and more focused on those around us, a hallmark of humble people. Expressing gratitude can induce humility in us. Humble people have a greater capacity for conveying gratitude. These are 3 good traits to cultivate in ourselves, and I think it's important to watch out for it in others as well. Knowing who we are, what we're able to give and how, practicing mindfulness to get us there, and having a sense of gratitude within us keeps us humble. It allows us to extend humility with compassion, which is what today's attribute is all about. Gandhi once said, I claim to be a simple individual, liable to err like any other fellow mortal. I own, however, that I have humility enough to confess my errors and to retrace my steps. We all need to let go of our ego. We all need to own who we are, how we give, and then this will allow humility to take hold and genuine compassion to flow. It's said that humble people are actually able to handle stress more effectively, and they report higher levels of physical and mental well-being. They also show a greater generosity, helpfulness, and gratitude, all things that can only serve to draw us closer to other people, especially when we are extending compassion. Learning to accept ourselves without judgment will help us then accept others in the same way. When we practice meditation and mindfulness, we have the ability to just quiet the noise. We can tune out the chaos, and then we can listen to what's in our own being, identify what our truth is, figure out where and to whom and how we need to give compassionately, and then do so with humility. Being grateful, able to show appreciation for all of life's gifts, will uplift everybody. In the words of Nelson Mandela, the first thing to do is to be honest with yourself. You can never have an impact on society if you have not changed yourself. Great peacemakers are all people of integrity, of honesty, and humility. We desperately, all of us, our entire humanity needs this right now. The COVID crisis requires all of us, no matter where we are on the ladder, to be honest with ourselves, cultivate this sense of mindfulness, along with these new habits in order to achieve success in taming the beast that's outside us, unseen, and also within our own being, especially as time goes by and we see that the freedoms that we once had may somehow be limited, and we have to get used to a new world order and a new way of being. When we are humble, our compassion will not have arrogance or ego behind it. It will not belittle or feed into another's perception of their own self-worth. Instead, it's going to flow freely with the beauty of true Tiferet, harmony and humility in compassion. Everyone will benefit, both the giver and the receiver. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks wrote, Moses, the greatest hero of Jewish tradition, is described by the Bible as a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth. The creed of our age is, if you've got it, flaunt it. Humility, being humble, did not stand a chance. This is a shame. Humility, true humility, is one of the most expansive and life-enhancing of all virtues. It does not mean undervaluing yourself. It means valuing other people. It signals a certain openness to life's grandeur and the willingness to be surprised, uplifted by the goodness wherever one finds it. So let us think about this on this 19th day. And may this help us foster humility in ourselves and others, drawing forth compassion without judgment or ego, enabling us to find success and peace in all of our endeavors. And may the compassion that we extend be filled with humility, the light of true intent, purity of heart, and express the beauty of Hod in Tiferet. And that is day 19 of our Omer. See you tomorrow.